Chapter 7. Cedric, well, you know. The beginning of April brought a new Triwizard Tournament task. Just like before, it was announced during breakfast on the 1st of the month. This time, however, Snape was announcing it. Snape and Darthwing. The Weasley twins also happened to be celebrating their birthday with extra tricks and pranks today. Along with the task, they'll need to watch out for Fred and George's more explosive pranks. Fleur, Victor, Cedric, and Harry stood beside Snape as he spoke. The second task is simple. You will first need to find a mermaid or merman costume. Then we will be stealing your friends. Potter, we'll take 2 of yours because we're terrible people, and we'll take Delacour's beloved sister Gabrielle. Darthwing laughed atop his shoulder. That takes care of Crumb. As for you, Diggory, do you have any loved ones here? Cedric shook his head. In that case, let's see. Snape looked at the crowd. Eeny, meeny, miny, you. He pointed at Cho Chang. What's your name? Actually, never mind, it doesn't matter. You will save your assigned person from their cage boats on the moat. I should mention, Potter will save Weasley, Crumb will save Granger. Great, Hermione said scornfully. You have 1 day, you may begin, Snape announced. It is great privilege to be saved by me, hear me, O'Neill. I will use my entourage, just as you have been, Potter, Victor said flamboyantly. Several men in black suits and sunglasses appeared behind him. I also have several students helping me. I won them over by giving them gold I bought on gimme.net. That also happens to be where I'm getting my costume. Don't try to steal my idea. None of you have the expensive upgrade. Gimme Sonic. It gives me 1 hour deliveries. And even if you could afford it, you must have Gimme Sonic before 8 hours before it activates. Get, Hermione said as she waited in the cafeteria doorway with Ron. Harry joined them and started brainstorming about how to get a merperson costume. Where on earth are we going to find a mermaid costume? Hermione asked. Or merman, Ron corrected. I have no idea. If only we could have signed up for Gimme Sonic before it was too late. Then maybe we'd have a chance. So no one has any ideas? Ron asked. I guess we lose, Harry said miserably. Before they could mope much longer, 2 buff men with pointy hats came for Hermione and Ron. As she was being dragged away, Hermione told Harry what he should do. Ask the Grangers for help. Grangers? Harry quietly repeated to himself. He walked back to the cafeteria and looked around. 2 more buff men came for Gabrielle and Cho. Not sure what he should do, Harry called out to the crowd. Grangers? An intimidating 7th-year Ravenclaw boy stealthily approached Harry. Who are you? He asked. I'm, Harry Potter, he answered. 8 sent you? He asked. Sure. A 6th-year Ravenclaw boy with brown hair arose and walked to Harry. He's a friend of 8's. I've seen him with her. You mean Mud? Yeah, we're best friends. Any friend of 8's is a friend of ours. Allow me to introduce myself. I'm Wilkin 17. This is my associate and cousin, Granger 7. How may I be of service? Huh? Harry asked, trying to grasp what was happening. You called the Grangers. Do you need anything? 7 asked. Mud told me to call you for help with the task. Ah, of course. 17 took out a small box with a red button and pressed it. I've just called all available Grangers and Wilkins here from England. They'll be here in 20 minutes. Only 20? Harry blinked. We have several jets, 7 answered. The 20 minutes flew by. Harry heard a plane and followed 7 and 17 outside the castle. A slim black jet had touched down and was rolling along the road they used to get to Hogsmeade Station. The plane stopped and 3 people got off. Thank you for coming, 17 said before looking at Harry. This is Granger 8's friend, Harry Potter. He needs assistance acquiring a certain disguise. A tall, pretty woman with long blonde hair walked towards Harry. It's a pleasure to meet you, Harry Potter. I'm Wilkin 18. She held out a stiff hand for Harry to shake. Harry offered his shaky hand to her firm grip. She gave his hand back and started pointing to the people behind her. This is Granger 5 and Granger 6. They both had Hermione's brown hair. You've met my brother, 17, our cousin, 7. Harry nodded. We'd have been here with some of the members of Generation 9, but they're busy with a certain family member. 18 glanced at her expensive-looking watch. We mustn't waste any more time. Let's fan out and find that disguise. 17, you'll bring me up to speed? They began moving back to the jet. 17 and 18 led the way, followed by 5, 6, and 7, with Harry trailing behind. Noticing Harry's confused state, 7 fell behind to talk to him. We're an eccentric bunch, I suppose. Why does everyone have a number instead of a name? Harry asked cautiously. We're a part of some risky business. Numbers help us stay safe, Seven answered. Despite Seven's efforts, Harry was still in a daze. He had never been good at math, and now he had to memorize all these numbers. The Grangers and Wilkins buzzed around him for a while in the Jet's computer lab until they found what they were looking for. I found an amazing disguise, Six exclaimed as she looked at her screen. 18 sauntered over and leaned on the desk, examining what Six had found. Perfect, she exhaled. Let's move, Grangers, Wilkins, Potter. She grabbed a large bag and walked out the door. After walking, they entered the forest and then found a girl holding a blue, sparkly mermaid costume. Harry, let us handle this, 17 directed. I'll distract her by saying I'm lost, Six started. If she doesn't put the costume down, then I'll give it a go, 18 intervened. 5 started digging through the large bag. He took a ski mask and put it on. Let's do this. Wait, you're going to steal it? Harry whispered. Yes, of course. How else do you think we're going to win the task? 18 asked. But stealing is wrong, Harry stated. You're one of those people, 5 sighed. No problem, Harry, 7 started. We'll give it back when we're done. Are you mad? 18 asked. That breaks the thief code. I'm sorry, the what? Harry asked in disbelief. As the protector of Hogwarts, I will stop any wrongdoings. Are you some kind of superhero? 6 asked with her eyes wide in fear. That's why I suggested we return it, 7 answered through gritted teeth. Yeah, don't worry, friend. We'll give it back. No harm, no foul, 17 coaxed. No, absolutely not, Harry persisted. Don't you want to win the election? 7 asked. Everyone else is cheating. This is the only way to win. No harm will be done, and once you become the King of Hogwarts, you can make sure this never happens again. But it won't happen unless you borrow this costume. Harry remained silent as he thought about it. Even though this goes against everything I stand for, I let you do it, he sighed. Now I know why Mud robbed the candy car. You guys are relentless. 17 looked delighted. 8 robbed the candy car? I'm so proud of her, 6 exclaimed. All right, let's go, 18 said. Showtime. 6 walked towards the girl. Without moving or putting the costume down, the girl gave 6 some directions. After 6 walked away, 18 planned to go in. Without moving or putting the costume down, the girl gave 6 some directions. On to plan B. After 6 walked away, 18 planned to go in. After a few minutes, 18 walked over to the girl. Have you seen a lost girl? 18 gasped. There's a ton of mud all around you. That beautiful costume is going to be destroyed. The girl jumped up and away from the mud. Here, let me help you hold that, 18 said as she took the costume. Look at the castle, she cried. The girl turned to look and 18 threw the costume to 5. Oh no! That masked man just stole your beautiful costume. I'm sure it will be back soon, though. 18 began to run back to the castle. But what about the lost girl? The costume girl asked. She'll be fine, 18 called. Fred and George set off a smoke bomb by the time they arrived in the cafeteria with the mermaid costume. As the smoke faded, they noticed that not even Victor had his costume delivered yet. Snape accepted the costume and directed Harry to save Ron. We'll stay here, 6 called after Harry. We haven't eaten breakfast yet. Harry went outside, remembering that Snape had mentioned boat cages on the moat. What's up, Harry? Ron asked from his cage as Harry came closer. The cage boats reminded Harry of bird cages that were placed on rowboats. The paddles were gone, and Harry had to figure out a way to free Ron. The students on the moat floated serenely as they swayed with the currents. Hi, Harry, Hermione called as she tried to get as comfortable as she could in the small cage. Well, hello, Mud, Harry greeted calmly. I have a quick question about your family. What madness have you come from? Sorry, Hermione apologized. I know, they're insane. So let me get this straight, Harry said as he picked up a rope off the ground. Everyone in your family is a thief. Harry threw one end of the rope to Ron. And that's why you know so much about lock-picking and other criminal arts. Harry began to pull a laughing Ron out of the moat. They have numbers instead of names to throw off the cops, and they have extremely fast planes. Yes, that's right, Hermione sighed. Ron writhed with laughter as Pigwidgeon flew to him. Looking very worried for his safety, he tried pecking the cage bars, but it didn't help. It's okay, Pig. I'll be out soon. I'd be more worried about her. Ron pointed to Hermione. Snape sent Victor to her rescue. I've come to terms with it, really, Hermione started. This is my home now. Pigwidgeon flew to her and tried to cheer her up. Harry stared at the lock on Ron's cage. Since I know you know this, Mud, how do you pick a lock? Hermione sighed again. First, you need a paperclip or a bobby pin. Hermione watched Harry look around the grass. I'd give you mine, but Crookshanks is on his way over here with my lock-picking kit. Harry heard a cat meowing and looked behind him. The intelligent orange cat was holding a small box in his mouth that said Baby's First Lock Picking Kit. "You learned to pick a lock when you were a baby?" Ron asked. Hermione nodded and then walked Harry through the process and told him which tools to use and how to use them. Finally, Harry pulled the lock and it opened. Ron crawled out of the cage boat and stood on the firm ground once more. "Now we'll be able to pick your lock," Harry said. "Oh, I already picked it, like half an hour ago. It was the first thing I did." Victor exited the castle on the shoulders of his entourage. The sight made Harry and Ron laugh. "Here comes your knight in shining armor," Harry teased. "My package is due to arrive in minutes," Victor announced. "I suppose I could try to help out this Miss Hermione, for she is too pretty to be locked in thy cage boat." Hermione rolled her eyes. "Can you just get me out of here?" Snape walked towards them as Victor knelt by the moat, weighing his options. "Swimming is not an option," Snape informed, Darthwing smirking from his perch. "We've filled the moat with piranhas." Hermione's jaw dropped. "How is that legal?" "They can smell fear, Miss Granger," Snape taunted. "Don't you worry, Harambe. I'll get you out of there." Victor snapped his fingers. "Get me a fishing pole." "Why would you think a fishing pole could even remotely help the situation?" Hermione whined. Pigwidgeon tried to push the cage boat out of the moat, but it was too heavy. Victor was given a fishing pole, and he swung it to the boat. The hook didn't catch on anything, so the boat remained still. Refusing to realize his failure, he kept casting the line to the boat. "Get," Hermione said quietly. "Hang on for just 1 hour. I have an idea," Victor said. "I am going to go on gimme.net and buy 2 magnets. I will throw one to you, Hermione Mayonnaise, and then the magnetic attraction will bring you over to me." Victor smiled. "Sort of like our magnetic attraction." Hermione sat up and grabbed onto the vertical bars of her cage. "Ron, Harry, please save me," she begged. Ron picked up the rope and threw it to Hermione. He pulled her to the edge of the moat and she climbed out of the cage boat. As they walked back to the castle, they saw Fleur struggling to get Gabrielle out of the moat. They decided to help her, and then they ended up helping Cedric rescue Cho. Dumbledore had been watching and awarded Harry with all the points for the task. Harry returned the seemingly useless mermaid costume to the forest girl, and they all said goodbye to the Grangers and Wilkins. In the days before the third and final task was announced, the students and the Fictum Post started all sorts of rumors. It was on everyone's mind. Would this task be the most difficult one yet? Do Victor, Fleur, or Cedric have a chance at winning the tournament? They had piranhas last time. Would the third task be even more dangerous? On June 1st, their questions were answered. The cafeteria was anxiously waiting for the announcement they knew would be coming. This was the last first day of the month for the school year. It had to be this day. The crowd became even more antsy when Hagrid called the champions to the front of the room. "Your rumors have been very accurate," Hagrid started. "This task will be very dangerous. Depending on how you do, it could be anyone's game. I've cut a maze in the cornfield and filled it with traps. Fred and George helped me with it. If you make it out alive, well, I guess you win. No one's ever done it before." The students gasped. "I'm just kidding. You'll be fine. Probably. This time the task will start in the evening, so you have some time before the maze begins." Many hours later, they were wearing blindfolds, being led to different dead ends towards the center of the maze. As usual, they were allowed to have help. Once Hagrid yelled to begin, they took off their blindfolds and tried to find their way out. They heard shuffling and saw Victor's entourage of men in black suits and sunglasses raising a throne above the cornstalks. Victor was seated on the throne, wearing a crown. From his height, he could see the entire maze, but he didn't seem to notice. "Find the way out of here while I take a nap," he instructed. "Get," Hermione said. Mannequins with detailed faces were placed strategically so you constantly felt like someone was watching. The approaching sunset was a constant reminder of the time, which made them feel uneasy. They cautiously walked around the maze, finding a lot of dead ends. As they walked through an oddly long path, they heard breaking stems and rustling leaves. Their path was cut off by more cornstalks sliding in front of them. They stepped back, making Hermione accidentally step on a small, suspicious section of wood. She shrieked as the wood snapped and she fell into a pit about 1 foot deep. She climbed out and they kept moving, being even more cautious. As they kept walking, they began to feel disoriented. Everything looked the same. There was corn everywhere. They didn't know which paths they had gone down or which ones were new. They heard a lot of screams from other places in the field. They contributed some shrieks whenever a skeleton or a ghoul jumped out in front of them. The sun disappeared from the cloudless sky and they couldn't tell which way they started from and which way they were supposed to go. The lack of direction started to get to them. They were completely lost. To make matters worse, they heard someone behind them. They quickly turned and saw Professor McGonagall running towards them with a bat. Their disorientation and fear became so bad that they thought they saw another armed Professor McGonagall run past them. They tried to chase her, but when they turned a corner, she was gone. They started hearing Dobby and tried to get away from the voice. "Don't you worry," a familiar voice started. "I like your style. I'ma help ya." "Mad-Eye Moody," Harry called. An orange glow started peering through the cornstalks. A strange smell began, and they saw black smoke start rising to the sky. "Fire," Ron said in terror. "He's burning the maze." They tried running, but the orange glow was everywhere. The smell was suffocating. The air got hotter and hotter. The sky filled with black smoke and the sound of Mad-Eye Moody's horrible laugh. "You'll be out of there in no time." "What is it with people trying to help us by killing us?" Harry shouted, holding his shirt over his nose. They could see the flames spread towards them as they engulfed each stalk. The fire was closing in on them. The task would have ended in tragedy if an abrupt downpour hadn't started. Still coughing, the three slowly rose their heads as the rain fell all around them. The orange glow became fainter as their hopes of survival grew stronger. The smoke stubbornly escaped out of the maze, or what was left of it. Harry looked over the area he had been blindly trotting around in just a short while ago. The ground was covered in soaked ash. The few remaining cornstalks stood as blackened, dripping stems. Behind him, Ron and Hermione began stumbling towards the castle. "See, this is what the outdoors does to you," Ron complained. Harry would have gladly joined them, and perhaps he should have, but dang it, he narrowly survived that task, and he wasn't going to disqualify himself by leaving. "Harry," Hagrid called as he held a pink umbrella above his head. "You did it! You were the first to get out of the maze." Harry looked around and saw the other champions were still in the remaining part of the field. He also saw Dumbledore in the distance, screaming at Mad-Eye Moody. Hagrid gave a large silver cup to Harry. Just as Harry accepted his award, lightning struck and 2 Death Eaters appeared. One wore a white mask, and the other wore a black mask and held a bazooka. The one wearing a white mask began to speak. "I just found out that my son, Tom Riddle, was placed in Azkaban." "Who sent him there?" he growled. Cedric stumbled out of the maze with a large bag of corn. "Who are you?" he asked. The white-masked Death Eater stepped forward. "I am Lord Voldemort. Fear me." "Lord Voldemort?" Cedric asked. "Do not speak my name!" Voldemort screamed. "Pettigrew, kill him." Horrified shouts didn't stop Peter Pettigrew. He immediately threw his bazooka over his shoulder and aimed it at the foreign exchange student. "Not again," Cedric whined. With an incredibly loud explosion, Cedric was killed. Smoke escaped into the raining sky as the panic of grief-stricken students started. Before the smoke could reveal Cedric again, Dumbledore instructed the distraught students to get to the castle as quickly as possible. Madame Hooch led the mass of sprinting students and directed them to the cafeteria. Despite the number of people in the room, it was silent. Mourning for Cedric, frightened by Voldemort, and frightened by the fire, no one wanted to talk. After about an hour, Dumbledore, Hagrid, and a couple professors entered the castle. They told the students that they're safe, and that they should get to their dormitories. Day by day, June went on. A large funeral was held for Cedric. Voldemort hadn't returned, but it was on everyone's mind. Harry, Ron, and Hermione were the ones who sent Tom Riddle to jail. If Voldemort finds out, he'll come after them first. Harry sent a letter to Sirius Black, explaining what had happened. He had to tell him that Pettigrew was Voldemort's right-hand man. He is even more dangerous now. In the last week of school, things started to go back to normal. The Fictum Post had a large article about how the election was right around the corner. Harry was glad to be back to campaigning. It made it feel like everything was going to be okay. As long as he could win, nothing bad would happen. Of course, a certain amount of him knew that wasn't true. The polls opened in the cafeteria on the last Monday of the school year. Throughout the day, students and even teachers voted. McGonagall had been prohibited because she's insane. Harry, Ron, and Hermione voted during breakfast when the lines were very long. They later recognized that it was a very stupid decision. To avoid the lines, some people voted during class. By dinner, just a few people went up to vote. Reluctantly, the Fictum Post had agreed to help with the polls. They had schemed to have 2 people sitting at the election table throughout the day. Each shift of students had a list of Hogwarts students and faculty. They made sure no one voted twice. Each voter would fill out 1 ballot and put it in the box. Coincidentally, it was the same box that had picked the Triwizard Tournament champions. The polls closed by the end of dinner, and the 2 Fictum Post students left to eat. Since the ballots would be counted after dinner, everyone stayed in the cafeteria. A lot of students got up and walked around. Hermione got to the box just before Sarita Skeeter and Colin Creevey. She hid behind the table and opened the back door of the box. Instead of letting Sarita and Colin begin to count the ballots, Hermione took a lighter out of her pocket and set the papers on fire. She put the lighter back in her pocket and walked away. Sarita and Colin approached the box and realized it was ablaze. Sarita screamed and Colin ran to find a fire extinguisher. By the time he returned and put the fire out, all the ballots were ruined. "Now we'll never know who won," Hagrid said sadly. Hermione shook her head. Perhaps it's better to not have a king. I think Dumbledore's doing a great job. He did fire Mad-Eye Moody. Harry and Ron were still incredibly disappointed. Besides, I'm sure Malfoy rigged the election. Harry lifted his head. Hey, you're right. He had plenty of time to. Ruddy snake people, Hagrid growled. This is probably for the best, Ron said. Dumbledore walked over to them. How about this, Harry? If you ever get a request or a concern about the school, I'll lend an ear. Sounds like the privilege of the King of Hogwarts, Harry exclaimed. Thanks, Professor. At the Slytherin table, Malfoy looked angrier than ever before. He was pacing around Crabbe and Goyle. Do you know how much time I spent making new ballots? And now they're burnt. Even when I cheat, I still lose. He stopped pacing and looked at Crabbe and Goyle. You know what I found strange? They stared at him blankly. When I was counting the original ballots, I found out that I only got 2 votes. Do you know what that means? Crabbe and Goyle's expressions remained the same. One of you didn't vote for me, Malfoy yelled before stomping around the table.
I didn't vote for him,
Crabbe said to Goyle.
Neither did I. Who would vote for someone who eats puppies?
Goyle asked. The following day was the final day of school. There were no classes, and a feast marked the end of the year. This feast would also crown one of the houses as the best. This championship is why Harry ran for King of Hogwarts. He vowed to make Gryffindor win the House Cup. In just a few minutes, he would know if his efforts were in vain. Dumbledore stood in front of the room. This year has been particularly special. A lot of strange things happened, and a lot of sad things happened. It has been a learning experience and the mark of new things. Though I'm sure none of you have learned anything in class, since many of you skip a lot of lessons, I'm sure you've learned more important things outside of classes. Professor Snape wheeled a new snare drum to Dumbledore. Before I announce the House Cup winner, I'd like to thank Ron Weasley for this new snare drum, and my new golf cart, and for restoring the theater, and several more things. No problem, buddy, Ron said. Dumbledore took a moment to smile in bliss. You'll have no trouble getting into a good college. Now, the winner of the House Championship is... Dumbledore performed a drum roll. Gryffindor! Gryffindor cheered louder than ever before, and Harry stood up on the bench of the table. Harry Potter, the Protector and King of Hogwarts, keeps his promises! He exclaimed. He then led his table in chanting, Not rigged, not rigged, not rigged! Harry and the rest of Gryffindor couldn't be happier, while Malfoy couldn't be angrier. It was the best end-of-term feast Harry, Ron, and Hermione had been to. They couldn't speak for everyone, but they had a strong suspicion that every Gryffindor agreed. The end.